And my argument is that no state can develop sustainably if the global governance, if overall governance and the economy are in crisis. A creative destruction process is underway, and we need to get the fundamentals right at the beginning. First, we must get the fundamentals first. And then the meso, micro, macro level issues can now happen simultaneously. Let me say that the aim of this lecture is to raise some general questions and issues that must underpin the search for inclusive and sustainable economy. We are not here to write just a blueprint for specific states. And let me say at the outset that in terms of the short-term coping strategy, I want to say that there is ample room for all the states in Nigeria today to increase their revenue base from the paltry less than 5% of GDP to more than 20% of GDP. And so it's about implementation here. So I don't want to waste much time talking about how you raise revenue and how you generate short-term finances. I want to focus on the bigger picture that will have to underpin this change that if it is about to happen. Given the resource base of each state as well, its human and material resources, we can brainstorm on state-specific programs to cope and compete in the evolving new economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to commiserate with those of you who are called upon to lead us at this point in time. There is no prize to be won for governing in a time of crisis. But there also lies the opportunity. Those of you who are able now to distinguish yourself in terms of the real change, the fundamental change, I think you will be able to write your name in the books of history. Let me say now to the next section, and which is the global economy and the great unraveling. The point I make here, ladies and gentlemen, is that the bust in terms of their global, oil prices might be here with us for a long while. The global economy is stuck in a low-speed lane, and the economies are running out of instruments to jumpstart rapid growth. We are facing a liquidity trap in the global economy, and there is debt overhang. China is rebalancing. Its excess rural labor force is exhausting. It has its cooling off mode. There is also the opportunity with China. The flying geese. The flying geese is a concept that originated about the Japanese, whereby the Japanese manufacturers, as they reached the optimum utilization of their labor force and wages began to rise in Japan, the companies began to relocate to the cheaper locations around Asia. And the same thing is happening now in China. China is reaching a level of rising wages, and Chinese firms are looking for the place where you have cheaper labor force to locate and invest. So it's an opportunity. The European Union is under pressure. US is struggling. Commodity super cycle is over. I want to repeat this. The commodity super cycle is over. The primary commodity price collapse, including oil and solid minerals, is down. There is no China that has been driving the price upwards. There is unprecedented inequality and youth unemployment. We have waves of anti-globalization and anti-immigration. Terrorism and violence is becoming the new normal. But what are the opportunities in today's new global economy? We have huge, cheap finance available. We have large markets for export-oriented industrialization. We have technology to leapfrog. The second background that is important is the Nigerian economy itself. What is the background or the context in which we are struggling to build an inclusive and sustainable growth? Ladies and gentlemen, Nigerian economy faces both challenges and opportunities. The first big challenge to highlight is that Nigeria is a fragile state. I don't know how many of you have been reading the Funds for Peace rankings of failed or fragile states. If you haven't, follow this. Nigeria was ranked number 54 in 2005. The ranking grows from number 1, which is the worst, to the last one, which is the best, the most stable in countries. We deteriorated to the 14th position in 2010 to 2012, 14th position in 2015, and now 13th position in 2016. Look at the countries that are before us and look at the countries that are ahead of us. The first one is Somalia, South Sudan, Central African Republic, Sudan, Yemen, Syria, Chad, Congo, DRC. Then you have Afghanistan, Haiti, Iraq, Guinea, and 13th one is Nigeria, followed by Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a red flag. And if you look at the variables that actually come in the computation of the failed or the fragile state index, it's quite revealing. And what I say and I recommend to the federal government and the APC states, you are now governing as a party, is that you must pay attention to this. When we came into government in 2003, there were two things that helped to frame the overall context of policy: debt and Nigeria being on the FATF list of non-compliant nations. Those markers helped to drive the framing and the implementation of policy. Today, my point is that the fragile state index must be front and center in terms of thinking about an overall policy framework at the meta level for Nigeria. While we are still on that, I'm not sure how many of us read The Hostage Economy by Hakim Baba Ahmed. Within Nigeria, there are pockets of isolated economies that are what I call localized trapped economies. Terrorism, kidnapping, militancy, violence, and desertification. These have become the defining elements today, the new normals. And several localized economies are trapped today and finding it difficult to escape from this. These are part of the national economy, and if we are talking about inclusive and sustainable development, we must unbundle or get these economies escape from the entrapment, as it were. There are agitations for self-determination and the elite discord. All of this say one thing. Somebody said, Nigeria has never been more fractured than it is today. You cannot have sustainable development in a context of mass elite discord. You cannot have sustainable and inclusive development when you have localities and states that are entrapped.